Once it's loaded, you're going to go to Create New, up to Print, or Photo rather, and you can find any of the portraits. So 8 by 10 traditionally, or you can do a horizontal. I'm going to do the same thing I just did, where I'm going to show you how to change the portrait if it's horizontal, and the same thing with if you want to zoom in or hit fit on screen, you can do your magnifying glass or hold Alt and zoom out and zoom in. That's really helpful. And I'm going to file, place my picture in wherever it might be. I believe mine's under downloads. Yours should be as well, or wherever you've saved it in your photos. So this is a horizontal image, but I have a vertical canvas. So I'm going to hit enter and place my picture in. Now I need to change this. So image, canvas size, and you can change your image size as well or rotate it here. I'm flipping this to inches, and then I'm going to do 10 inches by 8 inches instead. I'm just changing the dimensions around. So now my picture needs to be adjusted. What I mentioned before is if this Show Transform Controls isn't selected, you won't be able to see what you're selecting easily besides in your layers, so click that and it'll stay on for you. All right, so now I know it's selected. I'm going to blow it up larger. Yes, it's going to break off some of my page. We mentioned how, unfortunately, the camera dimensions and print frame dimensions are not aligned, so we got to work with what we've got. So I've got my cute little boy here. This was last year's. We got to do this year's picture. And this layers here, I'm going to add all of these different adjustments that are whatever you want to do. Like with him, you know, if I was being silly, I could turn him to Hulk and be, you know, be silly. But obviously I don't think I want to do that today. I'm going to take that hue saturation and delete it. This is more of a classic portrait, so I want to go in and I'm going to use two different options. First one, I could do a black and white and leave it like that. The second, I could do this technique we've already learned where I take my eraser and I could erase the layer that I'm working on. And you could, you know, have those accents or whatever you want featured. It's up to you. Remember, if you get too far in, you can take your paintbrush, paint that back over. So that way you're like, nope, that black and white needs to go back in, fill it in. Okay? So you could save this as an option and have your black and white. I'm going to delete this layer and do another option. You could do a photo filter here. This photo filter option shows you a lot of different options. You can do different colors and pick your own color, but they have presets. So a warming filter makes it a little warmer. So if it's a really cool picture and you want to warm it up, or you could do a sepia tone. A sepia kind of makes it look a little more old school, gives it a little more of a classic look. There's lots of different options, like underwater, you know. So I think I'm going to stick with the sepia. And then I'm going to do a different one if you want to. There's so many options. You know, try not to be scary and like invert your picture, right? Creepy. I'm going to delete that. But that's useful in other situations. There's posterizing it and changing. So any of these that you feel is necessary, the brightness and contrast, if you want to bump up your contrast, difference between light and dark, see how like it's not quite there, but you can really make it more intense, and that's up to you. And then you could go to what's a traditional portrait studio. They do what's called a vignette around so that your focus becomes on your face. So we're going to do filter, and you're going to go to, oh, see how lens correction is not selected here? I have to have my picture selected in order to do that. So if you have your filter selected, go down to your picture and it'll show up filter, lens correction. And there's a lot of options, but over here in custom, you can go down to vignette. So this is darkening and lightening it. I'm really not sure why you would lighten it. Maybe you want more of a snow look or something, or just to brighten it up, but usually a portrait studio would darken around the edges to make the center and the portrait become the focus. And you can even do the midpoint, you know, less, more, wherever you want it at. Okay? So I'm just going to hit OK. And you'll see over here, it's applied the lens correction as a smart filter to my picture. So you could hide it without, toggle it back, and that's with. So it's totally up to you how you want to do it. And when you're ready, you're happy with your portrait, whatever you've done, File, Save As, and instead of Photoshop, which is a really large image, like we mentioned, you don't have a lot of room, save it as a JPEG. So not the 2000 JPEG, just normal JPEG. And Logan, portrait, Halloween, oops, can't spell. Not in downloads, pictures, save. And this is the one, 8 is usually good enough. If you want a really large file, you can bump that up, but 8 is a good start. And this is where you're going to hand that JPEG into your Google Classroom. I am only requiring 1 for your portrait, and play around with all the different adjustment layers and all the different layers you see. If you decide you want to blur your background out, I can also show you how to do that, but that's kind of a little more complicated. So individually, I'll talk you through it. All right, everybody?